Every time I was bullied and humiliated by my stepsister, I would fantasize about someone coming to save me. When she dragged me into the bathroom again, forcing my head down to drink the toilet water, the bathroom door was kicked open. The hero I had imagined came to my rescue. Except she was a girl. She held an iron rod, sucking on a lollipop with her teeth bared, looking at me. Winnie, how were you so miserable when you were young? I didn't understand what she meant. But she kicked Rose aside and pulled me away from that cramped, suffocating space. Panting heavily, she leaned against the wall, laughing brightly with tears glistening in her eyes. Turning to look at me, she said, "Mom, you were so timid when you were young. How did you later find the courage to stand up to Dad? My name is Winnie, and my mother passed away when I was 7 years old. My father, David, immediately married the woman he had been keeping outside, who also brought along her biological daughter, Rose, a year younger than me. With the help of my stepmother, Linda, my father became the wealthiest man in City A. He didn't want to upset my stepmother, so he ignored me and allowed her and her daughter to bully me. If I wanted to survive, I had to obey their words like a puppet doll, being controlled by them. Rose lived under the doting care of her parents, while I became her punching bag. Whenever she was even slightly unhappy, I would inevitably suffer her beatings and bullying. I once secretly peeked at the fairy tale book on Rose's bedside, where princesses would always have a prince come to their rescue when they faced difficulties, and I too was full of fantasies, imagining someone would kick Rose aside to save me. But day after day, no one came to my rescue. Not even the family nanny could bully me. That day, after Rose was rejected by the senior she had a crush on, I naturally became her punching bag again. Fresh from school, Rose couldn't wait to come to my classroom, dragging me by the hair to the bathroom with her gang. She held a cigarette between her lips, her gaze fierce and ruthless. Slowly, she took the cigarette out and looked at me, saying, "Let me borrow your clothes to put this out." Before I could resist, a few of her friends pinned me down. The scorching cigarette but grazed the edge of my short sleeve before burning into my arm. Her eyes flickered slightly as she smiled and said, "It's so hot today. Let me treat you to some cold water." With just a glance from Rose, one of the girls beside her held me down while another dragged me, trying to force me into the bathroom sink. I struggled desperately, but they held me down firmly. I felt somewhat hopeless. Every time I failed to resist successfully, nor could I break free from this predicament. No one would come to save me. Only princesses get rescued, not me. They laughed loudly as they tried to force me, struggling, into the toilet. Suddenly, with a loud bang, the door behind me was kicked open. Everyone in the room froze in shock. I turned my head to see who had arrived. It was a girl wearing a baseball cap and wielding a bat. Without a word, she swung at Rose. Rose was caught off guard. By the time she realized what was happening, the girl had already raised the bat and was about to strike. Rose could only raise her arms to block. The pain made her scream out loud. Everyone let go of me upon seeing this and rushed toward that girl. In the chaos, someone grabbed me and immediately pulled me away as we started running. The wind from running felt like it shattered the chains on me at that moment. We ran for a long time before finally stopping that day. The girl who pulled me out leaned against the wall, slightly bent over and panting. Her delicate, petite face still carried a faint blush, with phoenix eyes slightly upturned and a small teardrop mole under her left eye. It all felt strangely familiar to me. Before I could even utter a word of thanks, the girl propped the baseball bat on the ground, tilted her head to look at me, her eyes flickering with disappointment before she shrugged it off and raised an eyebrow in my direction. She scoffed, "Winnie, how could you be such a coward when you were young? How did you ever find the guts to stand up to my dad later on?" I froze in place. I had never left the Collins family, nor had I ever made enemies with any of my classmates. I'm certain I don't know any middle-aged men I might have offended. "And what do you mean by the younger me? Thank you for saving me. But classmate, are you sure you've got the right person?" I asked cautiously. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught the disdain in her gaze, and my heart tightened, without even realizing it myself. Perhaps I had been hoping she'd say no, that she had come specifically to save me. She straightened up, then leaned down, those beautiful phoenix eyes staring straight at me, a smile playing on her lips. Though it didn't seem like a friendly one, she stared into my eyes and said, "Let me introduce myself. I'm from the future, your most despised daughter, Fiona." Fiona's eyes locked onto mine, her expression indifferent. But a deep sorrow lurked beneath her gaze, suddenly. My heart wrenched with pain as I looked at her in disbelief. My daughter, from the future. Seeing my disbelief, Fiona stood there and recited all my personal information, from my childhood to the present, every detail matching perfectly. She even knew things the Collins family wasn't aware of, along with the deepest secrets in my heart. A flood of overwhelming information instantly rushed into my mind. Still don't believe me. I shook my head. I believe it. I had an answer in my heart. But also many questions. Why was her surname Franklin? The sun slowly set, and where the afterglow vanished was swallowed by darkness. The streetlights in the alley suddenly flickered on. Fiona glanced at the watch on her wrist, an old-fashioned mechanical one. It's 7 o'clock, she said. An alarm bell suddenly rang in my heart. If I didn't return home by 7:30, I'd end up sleeping on the streets. Besides, I defied Rose today. And the Collins family was probably waiting to put me on trial when I got back. Just as I was about to turn and leave, I glanced at the daughter who had unexpectedly appeared beside me. If I went home, what would happen to her? She stared at me curiously, silent. After a moment of hesitation, I asked her, "Do you want to come back with me?" Fiona nodded without hesitation. I thought she was worried about me. But to my surprise, she smugly said the next second, "If I don't go back with you, I won't get to see you being bullied by the Collins family. Wouldn't that make my trip here a waste?" I was momentarily speechless, unsure of what to feel. I could sense that Fiona didn't like me. Would I become a terrible person years later? Why would I loathe my own biological daughter? The questions in my mind came to an abrupt halt as I arrived at the entrance of the Collins family. I pushed Fiona in through the back door and went back in through the front door myself. No sooner had I stepped inside than the butler led me to the main hall. In the hall, Rose was hiding in Linda's arms, sobbing quietly, while David stood at the doorway, glaring at me with a cane in his hand. Before I could step forward, David walked over and struck my knee with the cane. The pain made me collapse to the ground, but I bit my lip hard, refusing to make a sound. No one would feel sorry for me if I cried out in pain here. "Bastard, look at what you've done. Your sister was just teasing you, and you beat her up like that." David looked at me expressionlessly, raising the stick to strike me. I lifted my head calmly and asked, "She hit me first, burned me with a cigarette, but am I not allowed to fight back?" David hesitated. Linda frowned and scolded. "Now you've learned to lie too. Your sister doesn't even smoke. How could she burn you with a cigarette? But hasn't she always shared everything good with you?" Linda turned to David and said, "I told you early on that she's an ungrateful wretch who can't be tamed, and you should have sent her to the orphanage long ago. If Rose hadn't run away, would she have beaten her to death?" As she spoke, the mother and daughter hugged each other and began to sob quietly. In the end, the stick in David's hand landed on me. Rose's venomous gaze swept over me, her eyes filled with a look I knew all too well. I lowered my head, biting my lip, waiting for David to tire himself out. Only when he turned to comfort the mother and daughter did I drag my nearly broken body back to my tiny attic. I had just pushed open the door and turned on the light when I saw Fiona sitting at the small table and chairs nearby, grinning maliciously with a hint of schadenfreude. "Got beaten up, huh?" My hand paused, and with a mix of emotions in my heart, I finally voiced the question that had been weighing on me. "Was I really that terrible to you in the future?" Fiona nodded. "Worse than David was to you. How could that be?" I instinctively refuted her words, because based on my current experiences, I had sworn never to let my child become a second version of me. Fiona remained silent, quietly rolling up her sleeve and removing the vintage mechanical watch from her wrist. Beneath the watch's wide strap lay a horrifying scar. She raised it toward me and said, "You did this." Those 3 words froze me in place, the gruesome wound leaving my mind utterly blank. I never imagined I could be capable of such cruelty. As Fiona lowered her head to put the watch back on, "I'm sorry," I apologized to her. Fiona paused for a moment, then let out a light scoff that seemed both self-deprecating and mocking, exaggeratingly saying, "Rare to hear you apologize, though it's not the future you." I bit my lip and looked at her uneasily. "Do you hate me very much?" Fiona nodded without hesitation. "Why wouldn't I hate you? Did you come here to take revenge on me?" I quietly awaited Fiona's judgment upon me. Fiona nodded again in response. "Yes, I'm here to torment you," she answered as if it were the most natural thing. I observed her carefully. She only bore a faint resemblance to me. Fiona's eyes looked so familiar, as if I'd seen them somewhere before. but I couldn't recall it all. Do you need me to do anything? I looked at Fiona, studying her carefully. This girl who would be my future daughter, upon closer inspection. I noticed a faint scar near the corner of her eye. I couldn't bring myself to confirm with her whether I had done that too. The overwhelming guilt spreading from the depths of my heart was about to drown me. How could I have become so terrible? Can you give me a hug now? Fiona propped her chin, still as haughty as a little princess even in the cramped attic. I was a bit surprised, and she continued, "Want me to forgive you? Then from now on, you'll have to listen to me." I stiffly dragged my leg, which had just been swollen by David's beating, and walked towards Fiona, pulling her into my embrace. I could feel her trembling body as she reached out to wrap her arms around my waist. She muttered gloomily, "If only you had hugged me like this before. Now I don't even know how many people you've held. I wasn't even the first. I've never held anyone before. You're the first," I patiently explained to her. Fiona suddenly lifted her head and pouted. "How can you say that? Jack Franklin said the first person you hugged was him." Jack Franklin? I couldn't quite believe it and asked her, "What's your relationship with Jack Franklin?" Seeing my agitated expression, Fiona seemed to recall some unpleasant memories. With a despondent sneer, she stared at me intently and said word by word, "He is my father." The air instantly fell silent as Fiona quietly watched me. My heart was pounding like thunder. "This was mine and Jack Franklin's child?" she asked calmly. "Will you still be good to me after knowing who my father is?" I gazed at her, carefully studying her phoenix eyes, which gradually overlapped with the memory of Jack Franklin's sharp, narrow phoenix eyes. I chuckled softly, but Fiona seemed to have misunderstood my meaning. "Even at a time like this, you'd still dislike me, wouldn't you?" Fiona pretended not to care, propping her chin on her hand and lowering her head, like a puppy that had been abandoned. It suddenly made my heart ache to see her like that. I chuckled lightly, walked up to her, and reached out to pat the top of her head, unexpectedly soft. Fiona glanced up at me with a complicated look in her eyes. I smiled, lowered my head, and said to her, "How could I possibly dislike you now? And why would I ever dislike Jack Franklin?" Fiona's eyes reddened with unshed tears, but she still insisted, "How would I know why you'd hate him in the future, even if you dislike me? It doesn't matter, you can't bully me now. It's me who gets to bully you." I gently patted her back to comfort her. She glanced at me cautiously and said shyly, "I'm scared alone. I want you to hold me while I sleep tonight." The small, cramped attic had only a bare bunk bed, which was barely enough for me alone on normal days. But now with two people, it felt even more crowded. Unable to resist Fiona, I lay down on the bed with her. She curled up in the corner, hugging herself with one hand while the other clutched the hem of my shirt. Before long, she was fast asleep. Watching her with a faint smile still lingering on her lips, I couldn't help but feel a little amused deep down, as I secretly traced the contours of her face, so similar to Jack Franklin's. I sank into deep thought. I've secretly liked Jack Franklin for so long. How could future me possibly hate him to the bone? The next day, when I got up to take Fiona to school, she squinted at me and waved her hand, saying she just wanted to lie down. I let her be, grabbed her some food, and hurried off to school. Just as I sat down in the classroom, someone by the window called out, "Winnie, the teacher wants you in the office." I stood up and followed that person to the bathroom next to the hallway when suddenly someone grabbed me and yanked me inside. Rose held a cigarette between her lips, grabbed my hair, and pulled so hard it made my scalp ache. She reached out, patted my face, and sneered, "You dared to talk nonsense in front of Dad yesterday. What, you didn't drink then? You'll finish today. Whenever you finish, that's when you'll be let out. Let's see who's coming to save you now." With that, Rose gave the others a look, signaling them to lock the bathroom door. The first floor restroom was so foul-smelling that everyone preferred going upstairs to the second floor. Combined with the current break time, no one could hear my cries for help. The moment the class bell rang, my anxiety grew even more intense. I tried to climb out using the flush tank, but its lid was missing, and the tank itself was crooked. Every time I stepped on it, I would slip, and in the process, my pant leg got torn. Just as I was in despair, a mocking voice came from above, "Winnie, why are you always being bullied by Rose?" It was Fiona, peeking in through the doorway with a gleeful expression on her face. The door in front of me was opened by someone. She jumped down and dusted herself off. I asked in surprise, "Weren't you sleeping? Have you had breakfast yet?" Fiona didn't answer me but instead said with some disdain, Why do you care so much? You never used to care whether I lived or died before. Go teach your class. If you want to thank me, cook me a meal." As she spoke, she waved at me and walked out. I didn't have time to press further and hurried back to the classroom. I was already over 10 minutes late. The teacher frowned at my disheveled appearance and made me stand at the back of the room with my book to listen to the lesson. Throughout the class, my mind was preoccupied, and I listened absent-mindedly. As soon as the bell rang, I thought about going out to look for Fiona to see if she was still at school. I hadn't even stepped out when Rose and her gang cornered me against the wall. Rose looked me up and down. "Finished drinking already, trying to leave. Which lover did you seduce to get you out?" Her followers joined in the mockery. "Oh, Winnie, never thought you were that kind of person." All those malicious, foul words poured into my ears as Rose gave me a sinister once-over. "You're just like your mother, both sluts who seduce men everywhere." I raised my hand to slap Rose. But for some inexplicable reason, I could only clench my fists and stand frozen in place. Again, every time I try to fight back, some force takes control, leaving me helpless to resist. Rose patted my cheek and sneered, "Coward, still want to hit me?" As she spoke, Rose raised her hand to strike my face, while the crowd merely watched, with no one stepping forward to defend me. A slap landed, and my right cheek burned with pain. Whispers surrounded me, mocking my humiliation, still unsatisfied. Rose prepared to strike me a second time, and I closed my eyes in resignation, but the blow never came. Instead, Rose's startled scream made me open my eyes. Fiona stood in front of me, raising her arm to strike back, with the same ferocity I saw on the first day I met her. Rose was furious and wanted to retaliate, while her lackeys behind her also prepared to act. Fiona coldly snapped, "Rose, if you dare hit me, I'll make sure the Franklin family withdraws their investment from your family tomorrow." Fiona's words made Rose freeze. Clenching her teeth, Rose demanded, "Who are you? The Franklin family doesn't have a young lady as old as you. As if you could control the Franklin family." Fiona remained silent, and Rose grew even more brazen. Just as she reached out to push Rose, a sudden commotion erupted at the door. "She really can control the Franklin family," a cold male voice rang out from the front door, carrying an air of defiance and arrogance. I turned toward the sound and locked eyes with its owner. Jack Franklin raised an eyebrow at me as the morning sun began to rise, casting a glow that made his expression unreadable. Hands in his pockets, he leaned slightly forward and whispered to Rose with a faint smile, "If she isn't appeased today, I'll make sure your family disappears by tomorrow." Jack Franklin has always been arrogant and unrestrained. As the sole heir of the Franklin family, in the 2 years since his parents passed away, everyone thought the Franklin family was on the verge of decline. Yet, while still in his senior year of high school, he took control of the Franklin family with an iron fist and secured admission to a prestigious foreign university with outstanding grades. My only connection to him is that he was my mother's student. Every year, he visits my mother's grave, and during those times, he would ask me a few questions about how I've been doing. The Jack Franklin before me is someone I've never seen before. Fiona lifted her head with her usual arrogance, pursing her lips and saying, "You slapped Winnie, so just slap yourself until I'm satisfied, and we'll call it even." Rose knew that David valued his company and business more than his own life, even though he doted on her now. It was only because she posed no threat to his company. If he found out she had ruined the Wen family, she would definitely not get off easy. Rose gritted her teeth and slapped herself hard across the face, her cheeks quickly swelling and turning red. Fiona clicked her tongue lightly and said with dissatisfaction, "What about the other side?" Hearing this, Rose closed her eyes and slapped the other side of her face. The onlookers held their breath in silence. Without Fiona's command to stop, Rose dared not cease. It wasn't until class started that Fiona finally waved her hand. Rose's cheeks were swollen red on both sides, and murmurs and light laughter came from behind. Rose turned her head and glared at them fiercely, causing those people to immediately fall silent. Rose fixed her eyes on me with intensity, then lowered her head again. Perhaps she was thinking about how to deal with me after getting home. Fiona didn't give her that chance. I don't know how she managed to become my classmate, but when school was over, she stood in front of my desk and lazily said, "Carry my bag, let's go." I thought for a moment and glanced at Rose. Fiona turned back with some amusement. "If you don't come with me, are you planning to go back and get beaten up?" Hearing this, I picked up her bag and followed her into the Franklin family's car. On the bus, I was a bit curious. Jack Franklin had left early and wasn't on the same bus as us. Fiona was looking down at her phone. Perhaps sensing my gaze lingering on her, she put away her phone, glanced at me, and raised an eyebrow. Curious, I nodded, hesitating for a moment, unsure which question to start with. He's my dad. Who else should I look for when I come here? Besides, I'm Jack Franklin's daughter. What's wrong with being a little arrogant? Fiona shrugged nonchalantly. Speaking plainly, I hesitated to speak but ultimately kept my words to myself. When we arrived at the Franklin family home, Fiona led me effortlessly into the grand hall. No one from the Franklin family was around. Fiona took off her shoes and headed straight for the kitchen, rummaging through cabinets until she found a pack of instant noodles. Watching her tear open the packaging and immediately put it in her mouth, I hurriedly stepped forward. You're eating it just like that? She shot me a glare. What else? You let me eat it this way when I was little. I sighed, wondering how much karma I'd accumulated in my past lives. Stop eating that. I'll cook for you. What would you like? I found an apron and decided to make a meal for Fiona. Her eyes lit up as she put down the instant noodles and walked over excitedly, saying, I want what you made for Mia. I frowned. Who's Mia? Fiona gave a meaningful, oh, and said, Mia is the future daughter of your aunt's daughter Lucy. You cook for her but not for me. Lucy is the child of my aunt. Since my mom passed away, they often come to the Collins family to visit me. My aunt is very kind to me, but I still don't quite understand why I would later hate someone I like. I even treat my own child worse than I do other people's children. I could only lower my head again and apologize. I'm sorry. She suddenly grew even angrier and continued, who knows whose child you really are? You treat outsiders' children better than you treat me. I was at a loss for words. Seeing her sad expression, I blurted out, then I promise you, from now on, I'll only cook for you and only care about you. Hearing this, Fiona gave me a skeptical glance. I continued to assure her, I swear, if I ever break this promise, may I get hit by a car. As soon as I finished speaking, she grew even angrier, even jumping up to glare at me. Who knows if you'll change in the future? What good is your promise? With that, she stormed out of the kitchen, leaving me rubbing my temples with a headache. After bustling in the kitchen for a while, I carried the cooked noodles to the living room. Fiona sat in the living room wearing headphones and playing games, but her peripheral vision was fixed on me. I walked over and crouched in front of her, coaxing her, I'm sorry, I won't make reckless promises anymore. Okay, are you hungry? I made scallion oil noodles. Want to try some? Her phone's headphones weren't plugged in, and the video sound was playing softly. Watching her pretend to focus on her phone, I couldn't help but smile. Fiona snorted coldly. Who cares what vows you make, whether you live or die? Does it really affect me? Suit yourself. Though her words were harsh, her eyes remained fixed on me. She glared at me with moist eyes, a faint glimmer of expectation hidden in their depths. All right, you don't care about me. From now on, whatever you want to eat, I'll make it. How about I serve you for the rest of your life? Don't be angry anymore. Let's go eat. The noodles will get cold and won't taste good if we wait too long. I thought I'd have to coax her a bit longer, but as soon as I finished speaking, Fiona couldn't wait to let out a cold snort and walked over to the dining table, starting to eat the noodles. She took small bites but ate eagerly, and suddenly her eyes turned red, afraid I'd notice. She whispered an excuse that it was too spicy. Quietly lowering her head to wipe away tears, I handed her a tissue and excused myself to get her some water. Leaving the dining room, listening to the muffled sobs from inside, my heart felt as if it were being squeezed, the pain so intense I could barely breathe. I don't know if this is the power of blood ties, but seeing her sad makes me feel even worse than she does. Why will I become so very, very bad in the future? After finishing her meal, Fiona took me back to her room and asked me to help her fall asleep. On her bedside were a copy of Grimm's Fairy Tales and Romance of the Three Kingdoms. After lying down, Fiona curled up against the far side of the bed, peeking out with half her head, her big eyes fixed motionlessly on me. She pouted her lips and said, Read, I want to hear about Zhang Fei. I looked at the fairy tale book I had unconsciously picked up and asked her, Don't you want to listen to a fairy tale? Fiona clicked her tongue lightly. What's so great about fairy tales? Princesses rely on knights. But Zhang Fei, now that's someone who made it on his own. I chuckled softly, picked up the book Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and began reading to her. Fiona grew more and more engrossed, gesturing excitedly like a child. She insisted on swearing brotherhood with Zhang Fei. Helpless, I lay down beside her and gently patted her. She instinctively snuggled up to me, whimpering softly, and before long, she grew drowsy under my gentle patting. Lying on the pillow, she murmured, "Mom, I've dreamed of this moment for so long. Can you always be like this from now on?" My hand paused, my heart feeling as if it had been struck. I stared blankly at Fiona. I'm only 18 now, but that word, Mom, made me freeze instinctively. It was as if, in that instant, I overlapped with my future self. By the time I realized it, tears had already fallen. I lay down and looked at Fiona, my eyes curving into a smile. Truth be told, I had dreamed of this scene for a long time. After that day, Fiona and I went to and from school together, living in the Franklin household. The Franklin family consisted only of Fiona now. I never saw Jack Franklin again. As usual, I waited for Fiona after class, but she was called away by Jack Franklin's people. Rose came to my seat and, for the first time ever, smiled and started a conversation with me, even calling me sister. Today is Dad's birthday. You're not planning to stay with the Franklin family and not come back, are you? Rose gave me an innocent smile, one that sent shivers down my spine. David and I never had much of a relationship to begin with, and every time his birthday party came around, I was never allowed to attend. Too many coincidences add up to a conspiracy. I wanted to shake my head, but Rose noticed my reluctance. She withdrew her smile and said coldly, "Your grandmother's family will be here today. Do you think you should come or not?" I gripped the backpack strap tightly in my hand. She was blatantly threatening me with my family's lives. "I'll go back with you," I said, staring at Rose's face, only to see her break into a wide grin. Though she said I was going back with her, neither she nor the driver waited for me, leaving me to walk back alone. By the time I arrived at the Collins family, their villa was already fully decorated, and many people were gradually filling the venue. I spotted my grandmother and aunt at first glance. When they saw me return, they came toward me with expressions full of heartache. In the years since my mother passed away, my aunt and grandmother took turns visiting me. They are the family members who genuinely love me. Aside from my mother, when my mother died unexpectedly, my grandmother and aunt wanted to report it to the police, but David used me as leverage to force them to abandon the idea. Grandma walked quickly towards me with my aunt supporting her. "Winnie, why have you lost weight again?" Grandma said with teary eyes, constantly stroking me, while my aunt also looked at me with heartache. The banquet started off normally, until David called me over. David looked at me with a smile and introduced me to the man opposite. "This is my eldest daughter, Winnie." He turned to me with a smile and said, "Winnie, this is your Uncle Luke. Say hello." Across from us was a man with a large, round head and big ears, whose lustful gaze made me extremely uncomfortable. Under David's stern look, I obediently greeted him, and the two men laughed. I stood behind them, listening to their conversation. As they downed glass after glass, the man opposite turned red from drinking. Linda exchanged a glance with David. David said to me, "Take Uncle Luke to his room to rest." I looked at David in disbelief, but he threatened me with his eyes without a care. I always knew David didn't like me, but I never thought he would give away his own flesh and blood for his own benefit. Before I could react with anger, I saw bodyguards in the distance escorting my aunt and grandmother. David said coldly, "If you don't serve them well today, you can imagine what will happen to those two." I was frozen in place by his words. The reason David had risen to his current position was because Linda's brother was the most powerful underworld figure in the city. Through Linda, David had connections in both the legal and illegal worlds. It would be easy for them to quietly dispose of two people without any background. I glared at David with hatred as the two bodyguards beside me forced me into the room. I was shoved into the room, and the man's gaze cleared up considerably after entering. He leered at me with a lascivious grin. "David is so generous, willing to let me have fun with such a beautiful daughter." He clapped his hands, and 4 or 5 bodyguards entered the room, followed by my grandmother and aunt. Rose trailed behind them, holding a camera, her face full of smugness. "Winnie, no one is coming to save you today. Fiona is locked up by me. No one can save you now." My heart sank as my mind raced. Grandma and Auntie's tears kept flowing, as Luke stroked his chin and laughed. "Now this is interesting. Take off your clothes one by one yourself, or else I'll strip them instead." "Winnie, Don't listen to them, I'd rather die than let them defile you. Auntie struggled but was slapped several times. I indifferently removed my clothes, feeling nauseous as I listened to Luke and his companions' mocking laughter. Grandma's wails mixed with their laughter, grating on my nerves. Suddenly, those people lost control of my aunt, who went mad trying to push Luke away. The people around her started beating her, and my grandmother seized the moment to slam her head against the wall. I wanted to run to my grandmother, but Luke held me tightly in his arms, watching the blood flow from my grandmother's forehead. My aunt desperately screamed for help while Luke's hand crept under my clothes. I felt powerless. Again, every time I wanted to resist, some force made me give in and submit. Just as I was about to resign myself and close my eyes, the door was kicked open again. I turned my head and saw a group of people appear outside. The bodyguards respectfully stepped aside, and Fiona, dressed in a black miniskirt, appeared before me like a savior once more. Her eyes were fierce, and she held the same baseball bat she had used to hit Rose. The ferocity in her gaze sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. Luke turned his head and sneered, "Where did this little girl come from? You want to join the fun too?" Listening to his words, I broke free and slapped him. As Luke was about to hit me in anger, Fiona struck him on the head with a stick. Luke was forced to let go of me, clutching his forehead and cursing, "If I don't make you suffer today, I won't be Luke." As he was about to make a move, a light chuckle came from the doorway. "Then try moving, if you dare." Jack Franklin, dressed in a black suit, stood behind Fiona, and those men instantly froze in their tracks. Jack Franklin's eyes gleamed with murderous intent as he spread his hands and laughed arrogantly. "Fiona, hit them, let's see who dares to fight back today." Hearing this, Fiona raised the baseball bat and swung it down repeatedly, but none of them dared to retaliate. The Franklin family was a force none of these people could afford to provoke. Moreover, the current head of the Franklin family was a madman. Fiona struck with brutal force, and within a few blows, Luke lay in a pool of blood. Her aunt and grandmother had already been carried away by medical staff when Fiona entered. Fiona left those people barely alive, blood splattering onto her black dress like blooming plum blossoms. Fiona walked up to Rose, who was cowering in the corner, and lifted her chin with a stick, sneering, "I told you Winnie is under my protection. How dare you lay a finger on her?" Rose, pale with fear, spat out fiercely, "No matter how powerful your Franklin family is, murder is still against the law." Instead of hitting her, Fiona took out her phone and dialed the police, then gave her an innocent look. "I'm a law-abiding citizen, after all." She answered the phone, took the coat from Jack Franklin, draped it over me, and led me out of the room by the hand. Jack Franklin's people quickly handled the scene. David and Linda were arrested on the spot, and the photos in Rose's camera became the most compelling evidence of their crime. I looked down at Fiona's hand holding mine, which seemed somewhat translucent. In the Franklin family study, Fiona stood by the window while Jack Franklin sat across from me. "Dad, time's almost up," Fiona said to Jack Franklin while chewing gum, tilting her head. Jack Franklin looked up at me, his eyes burning with love and barely restrained madness. His voice was hoarse as he handed me the documents beside him. "Winnie, this is the evidence of David's crimes. He killed your mom." "Not me, I didn't kill the teacher," Fiona added from the side. "David framed my dad to send him to prison so he could take over the Franklin family. Every time we tried to explain, you wouldn't listen." I took the documents and started flipping through them. The more I read, the more my hands trembled with anger. So was it my misunderstanding that Jack Franklin was my mother's killer that made me dislike him and Fiona? "I'm sorry," I apologized to them. Jack Franklin was taken aback, then smiled gently. "There's no debt between us, Winnie, no need to apologize." Then why wouldn't the future me listen, and why was I unkind to Fiona? Fiona blew bubbles, tilting her head to gaze out the window as she said calmly, "Because we're all living in a fictional world, part of the antagonist family. The plot manipulated you into mental instability, making you think my dad was a murderer. So you didn't treat me well either." I listened as Fiona recounted the facts in the most casual tone. "This is a novel about a villainess's redemption. In the book, Rose is the female lead who made mistakes early on, bullying her sister, which led to her sister marrying the antagonist and having a child, only for the sister to later abuse the child. After being imprisoned, the sister went insane and killed her own husband, leaving behind an underage child. Fiona exists solely to highlight the female lead's remorse and subsequent redemption, while the child, harboring hatred for Rose, constantly makes life difficult for her and becomes the antagonist. The male lead, sympathizing with the female lead, joins her in atoning for their sins. Our family was just being manipulated by the plot, each suffering in our own way. But now, I haven't gone insane from witnessing Auntie and Grandma's deaths. Nor have we reached the point where David framed Jack Franklin. Rose is currently under Jack Franklin's special attention due to evidence of school bullying and other crimes. She probably won't be out for at least 20 or 30 years. From now on, it's all good. Without the female lead, this world is just an ordinary one. You don't have to give birth to me if you don't want to. No more following the plot. Winnie, go live the life you truly want. Fiona shrugged indifferently. While Jack Franklin maintained a smile with reddened eyes, though his hoarse voice betrayed his emotions, Winnie, now you can choose the life you love, and you'll never be controlled again. Their figures gradually turned transparent, and I lowered my head in silence. Fiona snorted angrily. I knew it. You never loved me. Not now and not ever. She growled. Jack Franklin remained silent beside her, and they quietly waited for my choice. I raised my head, tears glistening in my eyes as I tilted it and smiled at Fiona. Is Fiona not angry anymore? Mom has always loved Fiona. Fiona frowned, looking at me with confusion and grumbled. After tormenting you for so long, I'm not angry anymore. What do you want to do? I smiled and said, Fiona, it's time to change your watch. Haven't you always liked that little bear one? Fiona's eyes widened in place before she rushed toward me. And Jack Franklin also stood up excitedly. Fool. Why doesn't she consider how an 18-year-old girl could so easily accept suddenly having a daughter her own age? I held them in my arms, watching the approaching white light. That familiar electronic voice sounded again. Host exchange successful. Time will reset to the moment the host chose. No mother could fail to love her child. I traded the remainder of my previous life with the system, letting it bring my lover and child back to my 18-year-old self. Allowing my little Fiona to vent her anger, but it seems she has once again redeemed me. Here, nothing has happened yet, and I'm not completely controlled by the plot. We can still start over. Extra story. Fiona, opening my eyes again. Well, I'm still alive. The hands and feet are just a bit small. Looking at the familiar face, I couldn't help but feel happy deep down, seeing the man before me. Still my handsome dad. I couldn't help but giggle at him, but when I turned and saw the woman holding me, the smile instantly faded from my face. It was still my mom, Winnie, but she was smiling so gently, not as fiercely as she used to treat me. All right then, I smiled back at her too. At 3 years old, she nearly drowned me in a pool. At 4, she almost slit my wrists, but my sister survived it all. My dad handed me over to the butler uncle and locked mom in the attic. I knew she was cruel to me, yet I couldn't help but seek her closeness, even though it left me wounded every time. I hate her. Even loathe her. She only treats Mia well. Ugh, I must have been picked up off the street. My hatred for her grows stronger, and I resent those who have mothers too. But Dad told me Mom was sick, that she had been hurt by bad people before, and by the time Dad arrived, it was already too late. Mom was also tormented by her stepmother and stepsister. It was actually really tragic. After hearing her story that day, I thought, all right, I can still love her a little. Her condition is unstable. Sometimes she's lucid, other times she tells me to die. I went to see her again and saw her holding Mia, reading her a storybook and cooking for her, but the next second she was choking me and telling me to die. She doesn't love me. I suddenly realized this heartbreaking truth. I no longer want to love her either. I turned and left the attic, never to return, until the day of my 18th birthday, when Dad invited many people to celebrate my coming of age. That day, the servant didn't watch her properly, and she jumped off the rooftop. After that day, I no longer had a mother, and I became less and less like myself. In my dreams, I can still see Winnie, smiling as she asks if I'm willing to give her another chance. She would let me bully her. I thought about it and agreed. It can't just be Winnie bullying me. I have to bully her too. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in Winnie's 18th year. She was so foolish, getting bullied everywhere. But I was still a bad kid. I watched coldly for a long time while she was being bullied before finally stepping in to save her. Only I can bully her, no one else is allowed. Later I discovered Dad had come too, but he's even crazier than I am. He didn't dare show himself in front of Winnie. He was afraid he'd frighten Winnie. TSK, lunatics are terrifying. but my dad loves Winnie, so he's willing to restrain himself. He could only silently follow behind me and Winnie. I thought Winnie was the 18-year-old Winnie, never imagining she was the Winnie from before, so I've always been loved by her. It's just that we were all cannon fodder, but it doesn't matter now, because the current me is a child loved by both Winnie and Jack Franklin. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. I gave all my money to my 5-year-old daughter. I said to her, go find the man named Frank, show him my death certificate and the paternity test. He will take care of you from now on. Tearfully, my daughter asked me why I had never taken her to see her father before. After a long silence, I replied, back then, I tricked him into having you. The daughter widened her eyes, her face full of disbelief. Mom is a liar. After all, the meeting and the runaway were all carefully planned by me. Even the death certificate was fake. From start to finish, except for this daughter, I've been lying to Frank. Georgia's clothes still don't fit quite right, and honestly, raising her hasn't been done with much care. Now no one braids my hair, I can't attend school, and I can't even guarantee 3 full meals a day. Yet, seeing me lying in bed, my daughter still thoughtfully brings me water. Such a well-behaved daughter still deserves to be sent off for a better life. I hung a small pendant around her neck. Go on, Mommy can't hold on much longer. Do you understand? It's terminal cancer. I could be gone any moment, and I won't be able to take care of you anymore. Georgia's face was already covered in tears. I don't want to go. I want to stay with Mom. I patiently explained to her, you have to go to your dad. Otherwise, a child like you won't be able to survive in society. Georgia kept crying, her sobs giving me a headache. After much persuasion, she finally agreed to go find her father, Frank, the wealthy young heir with a fortune of billions. Just a small portion of his wealth would be enough to ensure Georgia grows up safely and smoothly. I'm going to tell Daddy that Mommy has been working so hard to raise me and even got sick. Wah, I patted her head, sweetie. Your dad won't believe you if you say it like that. You should say that your mom was a bad woman who often abused you, and her death was what she deserved, though it's shameful to teach a child to lie. But Georgia finally took my words to heart. I breathed a sigh of relief. Georgia fell asleep crying. After she fell asleep, I sat up from the bed and tucked the blanket around her. Even in her dreams, Georgia was still sobbing, calling out, Mommy, want Mommy. I sighed. After all, it's been over 5 years raising this little one. Even if it were just a cat or a dog, you'd develop feelings. But Georgia didn't know that from the moment she was born, she had been part of my plan. However, once she returns to the foster family, she'll quickly see my ugly true colors and forget about me soon enough. A gold digger, and a fraud at that. She even swindled Frank out of $10 million in breakup money and didn't properly raise his daughter, now, riddled with illness. It's just what she deserves. I'm still worried about Georgia. So I installed a tiny monitor on her little pendant. I also used the little cash I had left to hire a private car to take her to the Foo Corporation. Little Georgia insisted on finding Mr. Frank all by herself. After being turned away by the reception, she sat obediently at the entrance of the Foo Corporation, attracting quite a few glances. When Frank came out with a group of assistants and secretaries, Georgia rushed forward and hugged Frank's leg. Daddy, Daddy. Frank's assistants and secretaries were all stunned. Where did this little girl come from? He looks a bit like Mr. Frank. Could he really be Mr. Frank's child? Mr. Frank hasn't had any women around him these years. Where would such a big child come from? Frank just glanced at Georgia and said impatiently, I don't have any children. Have security take her out. Georgia quickly took out the paternity test I had prepared for her from her little backpack. Mom packed this for me. She said you'd understand once you saw it. Frank's stern expression cracked slightly, his brows furrowing tightly together. What kind of new scam is this? But when Frank saw the paternity test, it clearly stated that the probability of him being the father of the little girl before him was as high as 99%. He had no choice but to believe it. He scrutinized Georgia carefully for a long time. I couldn't help but laugh. Georgia wasn't afraid of his scrutiny. She looked just like him. Georgia looked up at him and said, You're my dad. Mom showed me lots of your photos, but she said she can't take care of me anymore. Frank gritted his teeth and forced out a sentence. Your mother is Kathy. Georgia's flushed little face nodded, tears streaming uncontrollably down her cheeks. She doesn't want me anymore. Frank fell silent, reaching out to pick up Georgia. The secretary could only whisper a reminder to him, "Mr. Frank. You still have dinner with Miss Bella tonight to discuss tomorrow's engagement arrangements. Frank is getting engaged to the heiress of the young family conglomerate tomorrow." Suddenly, a child appeared out of nowhere, and Frank even carried her into the Foster family's luxury car. The paparazzi I had arranged in advance caught wind of the situation and started snapping photos of Frank and Georgia like crazy. It didn't even take an hour before it exploded across trending searches and gossip channels. Hashtag Mr. Frank may already have a child. Hashtag will the alliance marriage between the Foster and Young Family Corporations still proceed? Hashtag some marketing accounts even dug up old photos of me by Mr. Frank's side from 6 years ago. Hashtag is the scheming woman's pregnancy reveal timed for today? Hashtag netizens below are already in heated arguments. Damn, she didn't acknowledge it earlier or later, just when Mr. Frank is about to get engaged to Bella, the heiress of the young family conglomerate tomorrow. She brings out the child now. Such calculation. Watch the video. Even Frank looks shocked. He didn't even know he had this daughter. Ha ha ha. Isn't this little girl's mother that minor celebrity who used to follow Mr. Frank? How could she not even buy decent clothes for Mr. Frank's daughter? The sleeves of the little girl's outfit are already too short. It's all about using the child to make money, isn't it? And keeping it under wraps for so long, probably just waiting for today. How heartless. Gold diggers will be gold diggers, but at least take proper care of the child. Meanwhile, in an expensive private dining room on the top floor of the CBD, Georgia was sitting across from Frank, looking at him timidly. Frank and Bella, the heiress of the young family group sitting beside him, were also staring at the little one. Bella was also quite troubled by this child who had appeared out of nowhere, but she had to put on a show of generosity and patience. "Georgia, did you live with your mother before? Was your mother good to you?" Georgia nodded, then shook her head. "Mom always goes out with different men. I don't know where she goes, and she doesn't have much time to take care of me." This is what I taught Georgia to say, but Georgia's words were still too conservative. What I originally said was, "Mom always brings different men home, doesn't care about Georgia's life at all, and doesn't let Georgia go to school or eat." Frank's face darkened, showing signs of barely suppressed anger. Bella smiled. Clearly this was a low-level gold digger who didn't even know how to play the emotional card properly despite having a child, failing to leverage such a great advantage. She also ordered many dishes suitable for children, then turned a gentle gaze toward Georgia. "So where is your mom now?" Georgia stared at the plates of exquisite dishes the waiter brought out, swallowing hard. She had been starving for a whole day, looking eagerly at Frank and Bella. "Can I eat?" Only after getting permission did she start devouring the food ravenously. Frank felt a headache coming on. How had his daughter ended up like this? "Does your mother not even feed you enough? Where is Kathy now?" Georgia swallowed the piece of Wagyu beef in her mouth before murmuring, "Mom is dead." Then, Georgia pulled out my death certificate from her bag. The time of death was precisely the day before Georgia went to see Frank. After a brief moment of shock, Frank still took Georgia back to the Foster family. Another paternity test confirmed that the probability of Georgia being his daughter was still 99%. When he called Kathy's number, it was already disconnected. He sent someone to investigate, only to receive the news that Kathy had already passed away. The Foster family was thrown into chaos by Georgia's arrival, even startling Mr. Frank's already retired parents. "When did you father a child, and one so grown? This is utterly irresponsible." But the die was cast, and raising a child was no trouble for the Foster family. Georgia went to the Foster family, her eyes wide with amazement. It was her first time living in such a big house. Her first time having so many people to play with. Her first time having someone specially assigned to prepare nutritious meals for her. Everything seemed fascinating. The butler, maids, and nannies all revolved around Georgia, and even Frank hired a private tutor just to keep her company. Even Frank noticed that Georgia was very sensible and not a troublesome child at all. She would play quietly by herself while he was working. Only on rare occasions would she give Frank a bit of a headache. Georgia always wanted to climb into Frank's bed at night. "Daddy, can you read me a fairy tale book? Daddy, I'm scared. Can you talk to me? Daddy, if you promise to take me out to play, I won't cry even once next week." Even because Georgia was constantly clinging to Frank, even Bella rarely visited the Foster family anymore. Two adults being affectionate in front of a child always carries a hint of awkwardness. One evening, Frank was working overtime, but Georgia cried so much that all the nannies and servants of the foster family were at a loss. Even Frank's mother got a headache from Georgia's crying and had no choice but to call Frank back. Frank rushed home from the company in a hurry and asked Georgia, "Why is Georgia crying?" Didn't Georgia learn to control her tears? Between sobs, Georgia said, "Daddy, I miss Mommy. What's so great about that bad woman? You'll have a new mom in the future, won't you? Wouldn't a mom who treats you better be nice? Aunt Bella will read you lots of fairy tale books and even teach you how to draw." Georgia suddenly had an emotional breakdown and started crying loudly. "I want Mommy. I want Mommy. Wah. I don't want a new Mommy. I want Kathy. I want Kathy." Georgia had never been away from me for this long since she was born, so quickly. They've completely forgotten all my instructions to them. I clearly told her many times that even if she had to mention me in front of Frank, she should say I'm a bad mother. Through Georgia's surveillance, I saw Frank awkwardly trying to comfort Georgia, probably cursing in his heart about how much I must have brainwashed Georgia. Georgia kept crying and started stepping on Frank's sore spots. "Daddy, when did you meet Mommy? Daddy, why can't Mommy live with us? We have such a big room now. I miss Mommy." Frank could still satisfy Georgia's reasonable little demands, but when it came to questions about him and me, he couldn't even make up an answer. The beginning between Frank and me was still very cliché and terrible. I struggled for several years just to become a minor, barely noticeable celebrity in the entertainment industry, earning just enough to scrape by. Meanwhile, he was born into a position where even investors had to treat him with utmost respect. Before I attended that cocktail party, my manager had no patience left for me. "If you fail to impress any boss this time, you won't even get supporting roles anymore. Girls like you are a dime a dozen in this industry. If you don't figure something out soon, the company can't afford to keep you." That's how small agencies operate. They sign any moderately attractive woman, leaving their fate entirely to how well they can leverage their physical assets. I can't tell if they're supplying actors to the entertainment industry or beautiful women to the bosses, but it all leads to the same destination. Beauty that isn't converted into money is utterly useless in this circle. I'm just short of these meager earnings to make ends meet, so I have no choice but to comply with these rules. Boss Bob is a complete idiot, and the director is no better, holding a wine glass in one hand and pinching the flesh of the beauty beside him with the other. A man like this would forget you completely the next day, even if you slept with him. At the entire party, the only decent one was the distinguished Frank. A man like him is never short of high-quality beauties around him. And he wouldn't touch these second-hand party girls, but I've been calculating since childhood, knowing full well that everything in this world must be fought for. I traded a pair of pantyhose and a pack of cigarettes for a male waiter's uniform and tucked all my hair into the hat. When Frank headed toward the men's restroom, I quietly followed. I stopped the door just as he was about to close it. Perhaps he had never met a woman as bold as me. When I pressed against him, all I said was, "Save me. Help me." Instead of trying to please, "Mr. Frank, would you like a drink?" I tearfully complained about how Boss Bob bullied me and how the agent forcibly tried to send me to his bed. All I wanted was to act properly here, but I was trapped against my will. Tears soaked the shirt on Frank's chest. When he came out of the bathroom, Boss Bob's head was split open by him. But what Frank didn't know was that even this encounter was carefully orchestrated by me. I told him, "My family has had it rough. When I was old enough to remember, we lived in a villa, and I was a pampered young lady. Unfortunately, my dad went bankrupt and got into debt, so now I have no choice but to do this line of work. Don't go falling for me either. It's not worth it for someone like us, trash like us, a father who committed suicide after bankruptcy, a terminally ill mother beyond medical help, and me, struggling to survive, smoking a cigarette, wearing cheap black stockings, both worldly and helpless." That's how I won Frank over. Frank, accustomed to good girls, was moved by this wreck of a person. Frank splurged thousands for me, securing the female lead supporting role in an A-plus drama. He also took me to various high-profile events. For a while, I was the only woman by Frank's side. Even the agent softened their tone toward me. "Kathy, you've got some skills. After losing a boss like Bob, you actually managed to win over young Master Frank." I chuckled and, without hesitation, negotiated a new profit-sharing contract with the company. The agent added, "Grab as much as you can while you can. Don't let the fat prize slip from your lips. Of course, I knew that in Frank's eyes, I was only occupying a temporary spot because of the novelty I brought. Yet, he was the only vine I could cling to in my climb upward. Everyone despised me, the gold digger, for clinging to Frank. His friends would say with a tone of disdain, "A woman like Kathy, just have some fun with her, right? When the time comes, give her some money and send her away." These little celebrities are a dime a dozen. In families like ours, we don't let small-time stars through the door. Just give her some money and keep her on the side. Problem solved. Even my fellow actresses in the entertainment industry would say, "Hey, take advantage of dating a top-tier rich second generation and squeeze out as much as you can now, or you'll regret it later." Kathy, don't tell me you're still dreaming of marrying into the Foster family. Even if you become an award-winning actress, marrying into high society isn't that easy. They all doubted that Frank and I would have a happy ending, of course. I knew there was no future for us. It was built on deception from the start. How could there be a happy ending? But I'm not like what they said, easily dismissed by Frank with just a sum of money. Sometimes when he bought me bags, I'd even put on an act of refusing them. What do these petty favors even mean? I'm going to make a much bigger fortune. Bella wasn't the first woman Frank was supposed to marry for alliance, while I was frequently accompanying Frank to various public events. The Foster family had already started arranging marriage alliances for him. Miss Wendy was even more direct. She saw right through my desire for money at first glance. "I'll give you $3 million to leave Frank." But she didn't know that I couldn't be bought off with just $3 million. With a delicate demeanor but a glint of shrewd calculation in my eyes, I said, "But I love Frank. I don't even need a title, and lately, he's been staying with me." I even gently touched my stomach, adding, "Who knows, I might already be carrying the Foster family's heir." Miss Wendy was annoyed, but I kept trampling on her dignity. "Miss Wendy, in your circle, as long as things aren't brought into the open, it's not a big deal, right? Don't worry, after you marry Frank, I'll definitely stay out of your sight. Just give me and my child a way to survive." How could such a refined lady tolerate someone from the bottom rung tainting her marriage? She had someone teach me a lesson. When Frank found me, I was already lying in the shards of glass, which pierced my skin, and blood slowly oozed out. It looked like there wasn't a single spot on my body left unharmed. "Frank, please let me go." "Okay, I'm really scared." Frank's eyes revealed pain. "Kathy, he once said he would protect me, but how can one person be tied to another every single moment?" Miss Wendy showed some mercy today. The matter even reached Frank's parents in the Foster family, and Frank had to assure them he would never bring me home before they let it go. In the end, after my pleading, he softened his heart. He gave me a large sum of money, telling me to protect myself well, and even bought me property, wanting to keep me as his hidden treasure. At that time, he didn't yet know that I was already pregnant with Georgia and had begun planning my own way out. Even my injury this time was because I provoked Miss Wendy. I took Frank's money, cards, and property, then immediately ran away with the child in my belly, and he, after I left, learned everything. I heard from others that he was depressed for a long time. Such a proud son of heaven, utterly fooled by a wicked woman from the dust. Frank blocked me, froze my card, and transferred the property ownership. Unfortunately, the money is gone for good. It seems he's determined to cut all ties with me for life. Only if I die will Frank be able to accept Georgia without any reservations, right? Such an adorable and sensible little girl. What a lucky guy he is. Georgia still won't listen. She took advantage of Frank not being home to secretly come find me. She asked the butler uncle to call her a taxi, saying she wanted to buy her mom a bouquet of flowers and get a toy to bring back, then turned around and sneaked away. She still remembered how to find me, with her little footsteps pattering. She walked right into the hospital room. Tears started falling the moment she saw me. "Mommy, Mommy." My heart ached a little. Georgia placed crumpled bills in my hand, her tiny fingers gripping mine. "Mom, even though the Foster family is very nice, very wealthy, and has many people who all revolve around me and take good care of me, I still want to stay with you. I took some money from the Foster family. Do you think this amount is enough?" My heart ached with sorrow. She's still so young. If she took money from the Foster family, how would Frank view her in the future? Just like her mother who only cares about making money. "Georgia, go back quickly. Didn't I tell you? Don't come here. Just pretend your mother is already gone. Your mother is a bad mother. You should go live a new life with the Foster family." I hardened my heart and pushed Georgia away a little, but Georgia refused to leave no matter what. I'll just stay for the afternoon, just the afternoon, Mom, let me keep you company. Don't send me away, Mom, you must be in so much pain. With no one by your side, can Georgia blow on it to make it better? Tears welled up in Georgia's eyes, yet she dared not let them fall. I closed my eyes for a moment. Having been a heartless liar all my life, I never expected to be swayed by this little girl. Truly, children are born to collect debts. Suddenly, Frank walked in from outside the hospital room, carrying a chill with him. Kathy, you're not dead. What trick are you playing now? I smiled bitterly. Frank was no longer the young man from back then, not so easily fooled. He pulled Georgia close, looking at me with a warning in his eyes. Don't think you're the only one who can plant surveillance in a pendant. I knew it. How could Georgia have escaped so easily under the watch of the Foster family? Turns out it was Frank's trap to catch me. Georgia tugged at Frank's suit pants. Daddy, don't be mean to Mommy. It was my idea. I came here on my own. Frank didn't believe it and was determined to pin the blame on me. I felt like Frank was about to strangle me the next second. Fortunately, he still had some rationality left and restrained his temper, asking his assistant to bring Georgia out. After Georgia was taken away by the assistant, he slammed the hospital room door shut with a bang. He walked up to me and said disdainfully, using a child to scam money, Kathy, have you no conscience at all? I replied indifferently, she came on her own. What could I do? With so many people in your foster family, you couldn't even keep an eye on one little kid, and you have the nerve to say that. Scamming me is one thing, but tricking such a young child, what did I trick her into? You lied to her that you were dead, that you didn't want her anymore. Georgia is just a little child. Crying every day, how could you be so heartless? Are you trying to scam another sum of money and fake your death again? Then dump this daughter on me, you're really living it up, Kathy. Frank's words cut into my heart like a knife, one slice at a time. The corners of my eyes reddened as I turned my head away, refusing to look at Frank. If I weren't truly desperate, would I really give up Georgia? But since things have come to this, I have no choice but to harden my heart. She's not just my daughter, she's yours too. There's a paternity test and it's been exposed by the media. You have to take care of her, or I have plenty of backup plans. Frank had never been threatened before, and he immediately wanted to teach me a lesson. At that moment, Georgia rushed in and stood in front of Frank, saying, I won't let you hurt Mom like this. The butler outside looked apologetically at Frank. With bite marks from Georgia on his hand, Georgia struggled fiercely. And he was afraid of hurting the child. Georgia still managed to find a chance to slip in. Frank picked up Georgia, held back his temper, and spoke to her patiently. You're still young. There's a lot you don't understand yet. Don't call a bad woman your mom. What can she teach you? How to scam money, how to have a child out of wedlock, or how to work as a hostess in a nightclub. With a mother like that, what kind of person will you become in the future? Georgia, be good, listen to me. Come back with Dad. Georgia could sense Frank's hostility, shrinking in his arms. She didn't dare to speak, yet she still wanted to stand up for me. Clenching her little fists, she tried to prove to Frank, Mom didn't. It's not Mom's fault. Mom wouldn't do this. Frank was so angry he laughed. If it's not her fault, then whose is it? You're so young, yet you already know to come running to give her money. Did she put you up to it? Kathy, tell me, how much are you trying to scam this time? Let me guess. Are you going to say you have a terminal illness and need a huge sum for treatment? Is it Georgia who's acting with you this time, or did you find someone else, a doctor, a nurse? From the very beginning, he never believed my lie about death. But it doesn't matter, I've already accounted for this. This is just my smokescreen, taking advantage of Frank's usual lack of trust in me. Georgia will definitely come looking for me. This little girl hasn't been able to live without me since the day she was born. I have no choice but to deepen my image as a liar in Frank's mind, making him completely disgusted with me, so he'll stop Georgia for good. Although this lie is clumsy, if he checks, he'll know I wasn't faking illness in the hospital. But I know him. He only believes what he sees, the woman who feigned illness for money. Urging her daughter to come to her, Frank almost instantly cast me in this villainous role without a second thought. But this suited me perfectly. For Georgia, forgetting me or hating me would be the best outcome. That way, when I truly die, she wouldn't suffer as much. Just as I had known him to be, Frank proved to be as arrogant as ever. Despite the doctor standing right there, He still pointed the finger at me. Kathy, I have to say you're quite cunning. First, you sent Georgia over. Then lured me to the hospital to find you, just to see you looking half dead like this. I tilted my head and taunted him further. Frank, don't you know I've always been a liar? If I'm putting on a show, I might as well go all the way. Now you know everything. Satisfied. It's just a shame. I thought I could swindle a big payout this time. Frank stormed out, slamming the door with Georgia in his arms. As I was leaving, Georgia kept looking at me, and I mouthed to her, Georgia, don't cry. We agreed on this. I don't know if she understood or not. Even though everything was unfolding as I had planned, I still felt a heavy weight in my heart. Dragging my sick body around while putting on an act for Frank was truly exhausting. Logically speaking, disasters like us should live for 1,000 years. But why won't you let me live that long? Why won't you let me stay with Georgia a little longer? I have no idea how Georgia is doing anymore. There's no way to see Georgia anymore except by scrolling through my phone every day, lying in the hospital like a corpse every day, waiting for my final death. The doctors making rounds always repeat the same conclusion, Miss Kathy. Staying happy is the most important thing. If you weren't so weak now, you could actually go out for a walk, maybe travel. Basically, when doctors say this, it's a declaration that there are no treatment options left. I have no other relatives. For these past few years, it's just been Georgia and me relying on each other. I used to think that Georgia couldn't live without me. Now I realize it's me who can't live without Georgia. From the moment Georgia was just an embryo, she has never left my side. If possible, I wouldn't want her to leave at such a young age either. Unfortunately, fate can be so cruel. Sometimes I wonder, have I done too many bad things? Is this retribution falling on me, robbing me of the time to be with Georgia? Sadly, there are no ifs anymore. After Georgia left, I lost even the will to live. I don't even bother with treatment anymore, just lying in bed waiting to die. I'm not a good enough mother, and the last thing I can do for Georgia is to send her away for a better life. I don't even know what a good mother really looks like. No one ever taught me how to be a good mother. My own mother didn't even know who my father was. Sleeping with her was easier than buying a pack of cigarettes. In my memories before I entered the entertainment industry, there were only the filthy water at the doorstep, the chaotic piles of trash at the street corners, and the malicious gazes of all sorts of shady characters. My mother didn't have a steady job and was an alcoholic, but she was beautiful. Beauty alone is a dangerous thing in such a poor neighborhood, but she didn't care. She had no dignity. She would do anything as long as she could get a bite to eat. On the rare occasions when she was sober, she would go to nightclubs to work as a hostess to earn a little money for living expenses, not to mention my education or my life. Even getting enough to eat was a struggle for me. Sometimes I think maybe she did love me. Otherwise, why would she give me food? Wouldn't it have been easier to just throw me in the trash? But then I wonder, if she truly loved me, why would she let me rot in the mud with her? Perhaps what she felt for me was just a shred of lingering conscience, but that shred wasn't love. I also inherited her beautiful face. If I hadn't been smearing dirt on my face every day and living like a little beggar, I might have been devoured by these people long ago. I earned my first income because an agent thought I was pretty. Why not try the entertainment industry? With your looks, you're bound to rise to fame. We'll give you a makeover later, change your identity. How about playing the role of a fallen noble daughter? That's a persona people tend to like. Yes, I lied to Frank from the very beginning. My family was never fallen nobility. We've always been the poorest of the poor, living at the very bottom of the slums. I've never even seen those high society things. I just learned how to deceive people, even after getting close to Frank. I still had to search online for the terms he mentioned at night or prepare for the next day's date. I repeatedly watched vlogs of places others had visited just to make sure my speech and manners wouldn't seem ridiculous. Sometimes it feels quite ridiculous. If I had a choice, would my life have been different if I had used this kind of perseverance to climb upwards in my studies? Unfortunately, there are no ifs. My mother never even considered letting me continue my education. In fact, she drank herself to death in a nightclub on a rainy night. She slept with so many men, yet not a single one came to claim her body. All these men treated her as nothing but a plaything. At the moment of her death, they merely sighed. What a pity. Frank was right about one thing. What could a bad woman teach if she became someone's mother? I don't want Georgia to sink into the mud with me. I can't bear the thought of her retreading my old path. At the time, I had grand illusions. since I could run away pregnant, I figured I could later threaten Frank into giving me a hefty sum to secure my future. From the moment Georgia could call me mommy, I could never bring myself to be harsh with her again. When her tiny hand held mine, trusting me unconditionally, I suddenly realized I wasn't such a bad person after all. Whenever Georgia fell ill, I would become extremely anxious, terrified that she might leave me, no matter how minor her illness was. I would take her to the best hospitals for the most thorough checkups. Georgia is particularly sensible and even tugged at my sleeve, saying, "Mom, this is too expensive. I just have a little cold," but I still insisted, "Georgia, don't worry about the money. I've saved a lot of money for Georgia, and she'll need it when she grows up." When she was in kindergarten, she was bullied by a little boy. Actually, it was a little boy who thought she was pretty and bit her cheek. But Georgia had never experienced anything like this before and was terrified. She cried and said she didn't want to go back to kindergarten. My heart was breaking at that moment, so I hired a tutor for her to study at home, and I wouldn't force her to return to kindergarten until she was ready. Most of Frank's money was spent on Georgia, and a small portion went towards my illness. The remaining money was also kept in the bank card, tucked into Georgia's little backpack, unfortunately. Now I can only see photos and videos of Georgia from the past on my phone, never to see her again. During this time, only Bella came to visit me. Frank's marriage partners all cared more about my existence than he did. She sat by my bed, scrutinizing me carefully. "I thought you'd be some great beauty. Turns out you're just a so-so. Seeing you look half dead already, Kathy, I don't even feel like competing with you." She came for a contest, from looks to demeanor. Even down to their current standing in Frank's eyes, Bella was dressed beautifully today, radiant like a proud peacock. Because of my illness, my face was haggard and terribly gaunt. The last time I saw Georgia, I had carefully applied makeup, but after she left, I never had the strength to do so again. All these women are the same, whether gentle or irritable, whether it's Miss Wendy or her. They all harbor contempt for women like me deep down. Unfortunately, they are too reasonable. Their good upbringing prevents them from doing anything to someone like me, whether it's Miss Wendy or Bella. These young ladies raised in greenhouses have hearts that are too soft. Time and time again, I've been used as a stepping stone. Anyway, Frank and I are getting married. I don't want you causing any trouble, but looking at you now, I doubt you could stir up any waves. Bella spoke condescendingly. As for me, I have absolutely no interest in such petty comparisons from a little girl like her. I gazed at her face, lost in thought. If I were to ruin Bella and Frank's wedding, or at least delay it, would Frank then have more time to spend with Georgia? What do you think the media would say if they found out you visited me, and the very next day I died in the hospital? Is the heiress of the young family group driven by love, or is she a venomous woman? Will Georgia still recognize you as her mother? Gritting my teeth, I curled my lips into a smile at her, pulled out the small fruit knife I had hidden under my pillow, and stabbed it into my shoulder blade. Bella had never seen anything like this and screamed, "Doctor, doctor!" The ward was thrown into chaos in an instant. I passed out. The last thing I saw was Bella's terrified look. When Bella left the ward, her face was ashen. It was probably the first time she'd been outmaneuvered. I chuckled inwardly. Anyone who got involved with an unlucky person like me would end up the same. Who asked these women to always come and provoke me? I called my former agent and transferred another sum of money to her, embellishing the story before sending it to the marketing accounts. Bella thought I was going to expose how she came to my sickbed to flaunt her power, even severely injuring me, and tarnish her image in the media. But that wasn't the case. I changed my mind. I altered the material I gave to the gossip accounts, switching to a different version where the villain is solely me. I provided my agent with 2 sets of materials. The first will be released tomorrow, showing me provoking Bella and taking all the blame, ensuring the internet turns against me. The second set, if Bella mistreats Georgia, today's events will be exposed exactly as they happened, according to my script. It will reveal Bella as the one who caused my death. All to marry into the foster family and become Georgia's only mother. This is a subtle knife. Even if the foster family doesn't sever ties with Bella outright, it will create a rift, ensuring Georgia re-enters the public eye one way or another. I've thought long and hard, and this should be the last thing I can do for Georgia. So, the leaked story became, former minor star Kathy provokes Bella, attempting to sabotage the marriage alliance between the young and foster families. Kathy left years ago, now left with nothing. What's the fate of a scheming woman in the end? online discussions started heating up, with most people criticizing me and defending the young family heiress. Is Kathy really treating Mr. Frank like a cash cow, coming back when she's broke, and daring to provoke the young heiress? Does she even deserve to? Gotta admit, she's quite successful at using Mr. Frank as her personal ATM. That young family heiress is really unlucky, probably never encountered a woman like this before in her privileged life. And now she's dragged into this mess, but what I never anticipated was, paparazzi also swarmed into the hospital, eager to capture the latest scoop. I had been extremely cautious when leaking the information, carefully erasing all location details, yet they still caught the scent. I shouted for doctors and nurses, hoping they would block these paparazzi from capturing my final moments. Otherwise, all my efforts will be in vain. Miss Kathy, can you explain? Is it true that you provoked the young family's heiress? Miss Kathy, why were you at the hospital? Are you suffering from some illness? Miss Kathy, was that child who appeared earlier sent by you to the foster family? Miss Kathy, doctor, Miss Kathy, what's wrong with you? Wake up. Camera flashes and equipment were surging forward, and my vision was growing increasingly blurry. Amidst the clamor of the media, I closed my eyes. Thus ended my bittersweet life. The bitterness belonged to the first half, born adrift, never having felt a shred of love. The sweetness came after Georgia's birth. From the moment she was born, she gave me all the love in the world. In a daze, I heard Georgia calling out, "Mom." My only dying wish was for Georgia to have a good life. That would be enough. Perhaps because my attachment was too strong, a sliver of consciousness remained in me even after death. I drifted away from the hospital and found myself by Georgia's side. Georgia hadn't cried for a long time. Suddenly, she began to sob hysterically, and even Frank's personal attempts to comfort her were futile. Everyone was at a loss, and Georgia couldn't explain why she was crying so uncontrollably, with tears streaming down her face. After a while, the butler approached and whispered in Frank's ear the news of my death. Somehow, even though Georgia didn't hear, she cried even harder. Frank also fell silent for a moment. He crouched down to meet Georgia at eye level. "Georgia, can you tell Daddy how your mom has treated you all these years?" Georgia's little face turned red from crying, her words coming in broken sobs. "Mom is good. Mom did so much for Georgia. Mom could have had a really good life. But it was all for Georgia, to raise Georgia." Georgia spoke haltingly, but Frank found it hard to believe. Why did she suddenly think Kathy was so good? Now Frank didn't know how to comfort her. Then why would she forge a death certificate? "Because," sob, "she was afraid you wouldn't want Georgia. She said if you didn't want her, she would," sob. He couldn't tell anymore whether these words were true or false. "Georgia, your mother is a bad woman. She lied to your father, and she lied to you too." Georgia wouldn't listen at all. "Even if Mom lied to me, she's always been good to me. She's never treated me badly. Mom is a good mom. It's just, Mom told Georgia to say she's a bad woman, so Georgia can have a dad. So Dad will accept Georgia, but Georgia wants Mom more." Mom, sobs. My soul drifted aimlessly like this, and upon hearing Georgia's words, I suddenly felt like crying, but not a single tear fell. Only then did I realize with a shock that I was already dead. I could no longer comfort Georgia. From now on, she would have to walk her path alone. I knew this outcome months ago. Yet now my heart aches as if I've fallen into an endless hell. I once read Georgia a fairy tale from a storybook. The ending was about the mother rabbit dying, and the little rabbit setting off on a journey. Georgia asked, "What does it mean to be dead?" I thought for a long time before explaining to her. "It means going to another planet, but she will still watch over the little rabbit." Georgia froze and asked, "So the little rabbit will never see its mommy again?" At that time, Georgia didn't understand the meaning of death, but she cried all day, and nothing I did could comfort her. Finally, she sobbed and tugged at my sleeve. "Mommy can't die. Mommy has to stay with Georgia forever." Even when she was so little, she would get so scared by stories about death that she'd cry like that. How could I bear to truly die in front of her? It was only after I was diagnosed with terminal cancer that I planned all of this. How heartbroken would she be if she saw with her own eyes that I closed my eyes and entered the cremation furnace? I'd rather she think of me as a stranger, or hear from others that I've already died, than witness it firsthand. And I also need to make sure that after I die, Frank can take good care of Georgia. Only then can I close my eyes in peace. the little bunny must have the courage to face the life ahead, not be trapped in the death of Mama Bunny. Frank's perspective. Frank felt somewhat melancholy. He had truly been played like a fool by this woman, Kathy, now that she was really dead. His heart ached as if being squeezed and twisted. He bought a burial plot for Kathy and even deceived Georgia for a while, but Georgia wasn't an ordinary child. It was as if she knew something, always clamoring for him to go find Kathy. Daddy, I miss Mommy. Daddy, Mommy was so good to me. Should I not have listened when she said those things? Georgia is bad. Georgia lied to Daddy. Mommy was a very, very good mommy. The nanny wouldn't remember my size or make my favorite soft-boiled eggs. Only Mommy would. But then Mommy got sick and couldn't take care of Georgia anymore. Georgia often talks about it, always reminding Frank of his past with Georgia. He knew she was an out-and-out gold digger. Kathy had never been to those places, and what she said was somewhat laughable. He also knew the things his brother said were harsh, like, just a little starlet, only good for warming the bed, and, just for fun, but he didn't explain it to Kathy either, or perhaps. He also felt that there was no future between him and Kathy, a wealthy young master from the capital, and a minor celebrity from a poor family with a mother who worked as a hostess in nightclubs, yet he still became deeply entangled, lost in the lies Kathy had woven for him. He likes the feeling Kathy brings him, worldly yet innocent, shrewd with a touch of foolishness, and he doesn't mind spending money to indulge her. Even her lies sometimes amuse Frank, but after Miss Wendy reprimanded Kathy, his words with his family were also overheard by Kathy. He said, "It's just for fun, I won't bring her home, I don't know what Mom is so worried about." Then Kathy left him in a decisive manner. Even worse, he could no longer find Kathy. Back then, Frank used many connections and spent a lot of money, but Kathy seemed to have vanished from the world without a trace. He even suspected whether her entire identity was fake. Otherwise, how could she have completely vanished without a trace? The arrogance of his youth made him give up the search all too soon. She was just a gold digger, wasn't she? Once she ran out of money, she'd come crawling back to him. So, Frank cut off Kathy's credit cards and took back the property he had originally given her. But Kathy disappeared for a full 6 years. Frank couldn't help but sigh. After all these years, it's still her. She can always control him effortlessly, even on the verge of death. She never bowed her head to him. There's also Georgia. She actually kept Georgia completely in the dark. If Kathy hadn't truly foreseen her own death, would he have never gotten to meet Georgia in his lifetime? What a heartless and ruthless bad woman. Georgia was actually raised very well by her. Every time Frank saw Georgia's face, he would think of Kathy. He felt like he was going crazy, even handing over matters of the Fu Corporation to others. He spent every day with Georgia in the house where she and Kathy used to live, which still bore traces of Kathy's life, including one of Kathy's diaries. It meticulously records every single one of her expenses. She took the money but lived frugally herself, even occasionally going out to work odd jobs for her friends to earn a little extra. Most of the money was spent on Georgia. The diary also notes Georgia's allergies, her food preferences, and dislikes. Kathy's entire diary is filled with Georgia, with only one sentence about Frank. Such an adorable little girl. We really have to thank Frank for being fooled back then. Thinking about it, it's truly fate playing tricks. Kathy is a good mother. Her own childhood was a complete mess, yet she created a world full of flowers and candy for Georgia. But Frank also realized that Kathy never seemed to love him, even back when she was a minor celebrity and acted like she would die for him. It was just her acting skills at their peak, yet he had already fallen in love with Kathy long ago. The moment she appears, his emotions are swayed by her. Frank deeply regrets why he didn't search harder back then. If only he had searched a little more, perhaps he and Kathy wouldn't have ended up where they are today. Could Kathy have survived if she had received the best treatment? He didn't even stay with Kathy when she passed away. Frank would spend the rest of his life raising Georgia well, atoning for his actions. Bella was also surprised. She thought Kathy would expose her for going to the hospital to provoke her, but that wasn't the case. In the end, when the public opinion emerged, it overwhelmingly favored her. But when the young family proposed to continue the wedding with the Foster family again, Frank refused. Bella also knew that Kathy had died, and she couldn't understand what Frank was holding on to. Didn't you both lose your feelings back then? As for Georgia, I like her too, and I'll treat her well. Frank, however, said he was sorry to her and that he now only wanted to raise Georgia alone. Some things may take many years to fully understand. Kathy still succeeded, and after all these years, I still can't forget her. Bella understood Frank's meaning and didn't press further. She even went to Kathy's grave to lay a flower, saying, "You really did plan everything, didn't you, Kathy? You used your death to make Frank take care of Georgia forever." After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.